Nosferatu was an influential film of its time. There has almost never been a movie that has influenced the genre more than Nosferatu did. But there have been several movies and films that have several connections to Nosferatu. The focus of this comparative will be the genre of horror and how two films influenced it. The films I will be comparing are obviously Nosferatu and horror staple Blair Witch. Nosferatu came from Germany way back in 1922. This horror staple received positive reviews, mostly from its creepy imagery and mood-creating shots. The design of Count Orlok himself is enough to give children nightmares. Nosferatu, as stated earlier, was created in 1922 by German expressionist Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. The film Nosferatu was spawned as an illegitimate film that was an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. This horror staple received positive reviews, mostly from its creepy imagery and mood-creating shots. The design of Count Orlok himself is enough to give children nightmares. It was given limited resources to work with, as it was a silent film. Another factor is that it had no color. Whether the film had color or not would have influenced the film, and its tone is up to the viewer. But I believe the dark black and bright white really bring out the creepiness and shadows of the environment. The colors also played a role in Count Orlok. The white makes him look pale and frail, but the dark black shows his sinister and devious side. This influential film worked with what it was given and contributed to the horror genre as a whole. The tone and fear-creating elements solidified itself as a must-have for all horror movies after its release. It is easy to shock someone with a quick burst or jump scare, but to create a psychological and fear-creating horror is a much harder task, and that is what Nosferatu set out to do. Being that the film is set and filmed in Germany, we can see many influences from the culture of the area. The German architecture and large European castles really show that it was filmed on site. Also, the character of Count Orlok really shows and symbolizes what the Germans thought of the Jewish people at the time. Count Orlok himself represents a Jewish people and really shows an anti-Semitic outlook on them at the time. To wrap things up, Nosferatu is an influential film that brought horror to where it is today. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the Blair Witch Project. This film flipped the entire horror genre on its head. It was so influential that it created a new genre of its own, the found footage genre. Found footage involves first-hand recordings of the characters in the film, as if they had recorded it themselves. Similarly to Nosferatu, it creates an environment that is spooky and mysterious. Nothing brings more fear into people than the fear of the unknown, and that film knocks it out of the park. Its color palette is similar to Nosferatu, being that it is mostly dark, as it is set in the woods in the middle of the night. As I stated earlier, this choice works to its advantage. The viewer is much more frightened, rather than a colorful, happy-looking film. This film was created across the Atlantic from Germany, where Nosferatu was made in America. We can see a big jump in time and culture here. Where Nosferatu is more conservative and historical, Blair Witch Project simulates a modern North American teenager, more carefree and rebellious than Nosferatu's characters. In conclusion, Blair Witch Project is an influential film to the horror genre in its own self. To conclude this comparative, both Nosferatu and Blair Witch Project are both great horror films that greatly influence the horror genre. The dark color palette of both films contribute to the scare factors of the film. Both of the cultures in which the films take from really give it its own unique feel of horror. Nosferatu's imagery and tone set a new standard for film, while Blair Witch created a whole new genre. Every day, more and more horror films are being pumped out, and if any of those films can take from the films in this comparative, then they could create something even better.